Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. I'm your host, Ray Flowers. Hope you are doing well on this 20th of February, 2025. We got a lot to talk about on the show today. We're going to do some football. We're going to do some baseball. We're going to have a little bit of fun here as I get up the last of my technical pieces for today that were not loading properly. We are good to go moving forward. I am Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Thanks for joining me here today on the show. We go about an hour every day at Fantasy Sports Daily, about 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We go for about an hour again. Jeff Mann's Elite Sports Show is on from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. We're on from 12 to 1 Eastern. Watch this show, take a break, eat lunch, go for exercise, get some work done, and then listen to the Elite Sports Show from 3 to 6. I'm on with Jeff every Wednesday on that show. And here I'm on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Justin Fensterman's on Wednesdays. Something to note, next week's schedule is a little bit different. Jeff Mann's taking a week off. So we're going to have a lot of interesting things on the Elite Sports Show over on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Justin Fensterman will be hosting, Monday, Tuesday. I'll be hosting Wednesday, Friday. There'll be no show on Thursday. I'll be hosting multiple drafts next week on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. On Tuesday evening, 8 to 11 Eastern Standard Time, I'll be hosting the FSGA Mixed League Draft, which I'm in, by the way. So I'll be drafting, and I'll be in that league. That'll be next Tuesday night. I'll have an article, or we'll discuss it here on the show. I haven't decided how I'm going to handle it, but I'll break down how it went next week as well. Also have Tout Wars draft next week. My attempt to defend my title. Both those drafts, Labor. Did I say FSGA earlier? The Labor draft and the Tout Wars draft are both on the 25th next week. So the Labor draft is the one I'll be covering on Tuesday night. I'm confusing all my drafts here. Sorry about that. The FSGA draft that I have is in a couple of weeks here. We will be talking about an FSGA draft today. I'll get into that more in a second. So the 25th next week, I'm on Tout Wars and Labor. The Labor draft will be live on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio from 8 to 11. I'm also hosting on Saturday and Sunday the AL and NL only auction reviews for Labor. So hosting all the Labor drafts next week, the mixed league that I'm in, then I'm hosting the auction drafts as well on Saturday and Sunday. And again, I'll be hosting a couple of days on Jeff's show on SiriusXM. What are we talking about today? Well, let's throw it up on the screen here. We will talk about the FSGA Senior League. Basically, the FSGA has got a multitude of leagues, and there's kind of like that thing, if you heard our show yesterday on SiriusXM, there's promotion and relegation. So if you finish in the bottom, you get demoted. If you finish at the top, you get promoted. I'm in the Champions League. That league drafts in March. The first of many, though, FSGA leagues. I think there's like 3 of the leagues. There might be 4 baseball leagues. I think it's 3. The FSGA Senior League started their draft the other day. They're still going. It's a live draft that they're now doing in the slow draft for the reserve rounds, or basically the reserve rounds. But we'll talk about the top of this draft. Again, my draft, the Champions League, that's in a couple of weeks. So we'll talk about the first round of that draft. We'll also talk a little bit about some news and notes about some players, including, if we have time, the Astros moving Jose Altuve to the outfield so they could sign Brandon Rodgers. It's kind of weird. So we'll talk about that if we have a moment. We'll also visit in about a half hour with Tyler Beaker. Tyler's going to join us. We're going to talk wide receivers and quarterbacks for the most part. What's the deal with Stefon Diggs and the Texans receiving core? What are the quarterback needy Steelers going to do? What's going to happen to guys like Darnold and Stafford and Rodgers? What can the Bengals make a team? I mean, we're hearing they're going to try to play Higgins. They're going to try to play Chase. They're going to try to play Hendrickson. Can you even do that? Does that even work in the modern day? Adam Thielen, Jameson, Williams, Christian Kirk, some other names that we'll be talking about later. Okay, so I will throw up on the screen now for those of you watching live on Facebook or on YouTube or on Twitter X, or even watching on demand. I'm going to throw up on the screen here a link to the draft. I'll also announce what it is. This is a 14-team mixed league for the FSGA, Fantasy Sports Gaming Association, formerly the FSTA. This league is a 14-team mixed league. It's called the FSGA Senior League. So that is www.rtsports.com/FSGA-senior. rtsports.com/FSGA-senior. 14-team mixed league. And you can see there on the screen the results of the first round. the link you can click on or create it yourself and see the whole board. It would have been so small here, it wouldn't have done any good. So I didn't want to create 47 slides and all that. So we're just doing it this way. We're going a little old school here. Starting off in this 14-team mixed league with Shohei Ohtani number 1, not a surprise at all. I think Shohei Ohtani in the majority of leagues will probably go number 1. I think that's pretty safe to say, right? I also have the number 1 pick in Tout Wars next week on Tuesday. Ohtani was on my team last year when I won the championship. Will he be on my team this year? We'll see next week. Number 2 is Aaron Judge. Number 3 is Bobby Witt. Number 4 is Elly De La Cruz. 5 is Jose Ramirez. 6, Juan Soto. Gunnar Henderson. Paul Skeens. Fernando Tatis. Francisco Lindor. Kyle Tucker. Corbin Carroll. Mookie Betts. And rounding out the first round, Willy Adames. Now, I wasn't there. I didn't cover this draft. I don't know what happened. I have to think that was a mistake. Maybe I'm wrong. But I have to think that is a mistake. If that Willy Adames pick at number 14 wasn't a mistake, I question that owner. To be fair, Willy Adames obviously had a really impressive season last year for the Brewers. He signed a massive deal with the Giants. It's 107 years, 180 million or whatever it is. He's going to play every day. He's going to be very productive. There's no debate about that. However, Willy Adames is a guy that's not a big booster in the batting average category. There are questions. He stole bases last year, which is remarkable because he's never really been a stolen base guy, but he went 30-20 last year. I don't think it's reasonable to expect him to steal 20 bases again, and I don't even know if he hits 30 home runs again. Moving from Milwaukee to San Francisco is a big negative. That ballpark in San Francisco is a pitcher's haven. So that's got to be a mistake, okay? It has to be a mistake. And if you look at his ADP over at the NFBC for the month of February, we have to date in the month of February, 90 drafts. His ADP is about 78. So even if you really wanted Willy Adames, you have to understand that he was going to be available at pick 40 when it came back to him in the 3rd round, right? So, okay. So that's the only pick that really doesn't make sense. The first pick of the 2nd round ended up being Vladimir Guerrero, which I think a lot of people will take in the 1st round. So there's that. Interesting here. Let's again, I think Ohtani at number 1 makes all the sense in the world. Judge, Witt, De La Cruz. The ADP over at the NFBC is Ohtani, Witt, Judge, De La Cruz. Jose Ramirez 5th. Henderson and Soto are flipped in ADP. Then we've got Kyle Tucker, Corbin Carroll, Mookie Betts, Fernando Tatis, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Paul Skeens, and Julio Rodriguez. So that's how the ADP plays out versus what we have in the FSGA draft. Julio Rodriguez went pick 15, 16, 17, so he didn't fall too much. So this was, other than Willy Adames, this FSGA senior draft went very much along the lines of what ADP, a little bit of, up, down, but the guys are all basically there. And I've talked about this a lot. There's an article over at fantasyguru.com. If you haven't subscribed to the site yet, click the subscribe tab in the top right corner, get signed up. We even discussed on the show here. Yeah, the history of the 1st round. It's not good. Jeff Mans and I spoke about this on his show last Wednesday. We really talked about it. Spent a good 10 minutes talking about it. And again, the article's over at fantasyguru.com. The bottom line is this. 1st round picks have about a 1 in 3 chance of delivering a 1st round return. And that's over years and years and years and years, okay? That's what it is. So if you have 14, 15 picks in the 1st round, you're going to get 4 hits on average, something like that. So it's always interesting to me how we're always all so certain on draft day who the number 1 pick is, who the number 5 pick is, who the 1st round guy. We're also certain, again, this draft basically had the exact same players that ADP does, just in a little bit different order. History tells us only a third of these guys are going to return 1st round value. Now, we don't go rogue to the point of Willy Adames because, again, Willy Adames' ADP is about 78, which means if you waited to the 3rd round, he'd be there at pick 42 or whatever the hell it is, right? So that's getting too far aggressive with ADP. We can use ADP again as a guide to tell us how to push things and how not to push things. That's pushing things way too far. But ADP isn't always right. And in fact, it's usually wrong when it comes to the 1st round. And when you hear that only 1 out of 3 1st round picks return 1st round value, you start to understand how unimportant ADP can be. Now, tomorrow we're going to release the draft guide over at fantasyguru.com. I'll break down what that is, why I don't like it, why I don't think you should use it. But we will have it available tomorrow. It'll be available not before the show tomorrow because the show starts for me at 9 in the morning. That's something that has to be hand collated and hand done, so it'll be available tomorrow afternoon over at fantasyguru.com. But that'll be available tomorrow. We'll talk more about what that is and all that tomorrow. In terms of this first round, again, basically what was expected, basically. Now let's look at some of the pairings that these teams had, which I always find interesting. Team 1 had Ohtani and Freddie Freeman. In theory, a great combination. Both Dodgers, okay. Team 1 has 2 Dodgers and 2 Yankees in the first 5 picks. Jazz Chisholm and Devin Williams. So got a lot of Yankee and a lot of Dodger. Not that there's anything wrong with that, okay? But, you start running into zones where, you start relying too heavily on a certain team or teams, looking at the rest of team number 1 squad, the go-to guys. They don't have any other Yankees or Dodgers that I can see. So they didn't continue to build on that. Ohtani and Freeman, a good duo. Nothing wrong with that. They then went and got Jazz Chisholm in the 3rd round to get some speed. So corner infielders, we got 50 steals pretty much guaranteed with those 3 guys, and obviously the potential for a lot more than that. A good start there. Aaron Judge, Trey Turner, really like that. Again, we've got up the middle, we've got outfield, we've got power, we've got speed, we've got batting average. That's a really nice combination of players. We got a report this morning that yesterday, suggesting that Trey Turner might move into the leadoff spot instead of Kyle Schwarber with the Phillies. The idea being that Turner's gotten a little too aggressive, and it might be better for him and better for the offense if he returns to batting leadoff, where his goal is more to get on base than trying to do things. They felt that he admitted hitting in front of Bryce Harper, he tried to get aggressive, knowing that he would get pitches to hit because they don't want to put him on in front of Harper, and maybe got a little bit out of himself. So that's interesting. Doesn't hurt if he's hitting second or first. Be great if he hit first. But Judge and Turner is a great combination. Bobby Witt and Corbin Burns. I'm not a huge fan of taking pitching early. I don't have a problem doing Witt and Burns. Witt's a superstar. You can make the argument he should be the first pick. You can definitely make that case. I personally would take him ahead of Aaron Judge because I would worry about Judge and his size. I worry about Judge, obviously, and his ability to steal bases. I worry about Judge being in the lineup on a daily basis. Don't have those concerns with Bobby Witt. So Witt and Corbin Burns. Nothing wrong with that combination. Strong start there. Elly De La Cruz, Kedal Marte. Interesting. Andrew Machado of Yahoo going with 2 guys up the middle. Some people will go speed early. Some guys will go power early. Some guys will go arms early. Some will go outfielders early. Some will go infielders early. So there's a whole, obviously, variety of options you can avail yourself of. It is interesting to see De La Cruz and Marte, again, 2 infielders with the first 2 picks. With 3rd pick, Ronald Acuna. That's very interesting. So Acuna, who's likely to miss most, if not all of April, that's kind of what we're thinking now coming back from the injury. That's a pretty great start there for Team Yahoo. Next up for prize picks, Jose Ramirez and Zach Wheeler. Banging duo there. Again, that's very much like the 3rd team that went and Burns. Prize picks then went with Austin Wheeler in the 3rd round. Nothing wrong with Austin Riley. Totally fine taking Austin Riley, but Jose Ramirez and Austin Riley, you've locked in your corner infield spot. You know what I mean? And then, it's not 2 great players, not a problem doing that, but be cautious locking yourself in like that early on, because if there's a bargain later at 3rd base, you're out. If there's a player you like at 3rd base or a player that you're targeting late in the draft, why are you taking him? You've already got 2 guys at 3rd base. There's just nothing there. So anyway, it's a little limiting, but I don't mind the players in general. The next Yahoo team with Juan Soto and Logan Gilbert. Again, Logan Gilbert I love. Logan Gilbert, by the way, I think he led baseball in WHIP last year. No one talks about that. He's throwing 200 innings, giving you 200 strikeouts. Like, he's really good. Love him as your SP1. No negative to say about Juan Soto. Next up, we've got Gunnar Henderson, Rafael Devers, Manny Machado. So Team EY did it too. Devers and Machado, both 3rd basemen, 2 of their first 3 picks, locking in the corner infield spot. I don't love that. And again, for the reasons I discussed in the previous situation, I also find it interesting that we then went with Gunnar Henderson, so that we've got 3 infielders, which again is fine. 3 infielders there. We didn't get our first outfielder on that team until the 5th round. Next up, Fantrax team, Paul Skeens in the 1st round. I'm not taking a pitcher in the 1st round. We all know that. You should know that. If you don't know that, we're not taking pitchers in the first round. Too much risk with pitchers, too much uncertainty with pitchers. They don't produce saves, starting pitchers. The win total is not really reflective in a 5x5 setup of how they pitch. Paul Skeens could be great and win 10 games. He could be great and win 18 games. So we're not doing that. Paul Skeens, Bryce Harper, love the combination there. So again, it worked out. That's fine. I just don't like taking the pitcher in the first round. NBC's RotoWire team took Fernando Tatis and Jarren Duran. So 2 outfielders. To me, this is a better way to build. 2 outfielders in Tatis and Duran, power and speed, guys that should play every day. Some injury risk with Tatis, but okay. And then in the third round, George Kirby. I like that build a lot better than going a pitcher in the second or first round. Next up, Francisco Lindor, Yordan Alvarez, power, speed, stability, nice duo there. Rotoballer's got the Kyle Tucker, Tarek Skubal combination. Again, there's no negative there. Pete Alonso in the third round is kind of limiting. I think, if you look at this, we play this out. Pete Alonso in the third round, Emmanuel Clase in the fourth round. So Anthony Ariano's got the best starter, arguably, in Tarek Skubal, the best reliever, arguably, in Emmanuel Clase. But the problem is we're through 5 rounds of the draft, and this team's got 25 steals. That's rough. That's rough. Not the way I would build a team. Individually, the players are obviously fine. CBS Sports had Corbin Carroll and Julio Rodriguez, money shot. Just money shot. And, both these guys, Corbin Carroll and Julio Rodriguez, both go 20-20. Carroll could go 20-40. Rodriguez could go 30-30. To me, that's why some people want to draft at the end of the first round and not start. That's just fantastic. The next team, Rolling Insights, got Betts and Churio. So think about that. Carroll, Rodriguez, Betts, and Churio out of the 12 and 13 spots, banging. That, to me, is the prototypical way to start a draft. Power, speed, stability, batting average, 5 category contributors. There you go. And then finally, that Willy Adames, Vladimir Guerrero combination that we talked about earlier. So that's how this draft played out. Again, my FSGA draft is in March. As I misspoke earlier, on Tuesday next week, I'll be hosting at 8 to 11 Eastern time the Labor Draft on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. I'm in that 15-team draft. On Saturday and Sunday next week, I'll be breaking down the NL and AL Labor auction drafts, or auctions, I guess you should say. I'll be hosting the show on SiriusXM, breaking that down. On Tuesday next week, I'll also be doing my Tout Wars team as well. So double duty, triple duty on Tuesday next week, quadruple duty on. That's a good point. Let me check something real quick here. My Tout Wars draft starts at, I think it's 8 in the morning next week. Ooh. So I don't know if we're going to have a show next Tuesday. I'll have to figure that out. I'll let you know tomorrow. But I don't know if I'll have a show next Tuesday, to be quite honest, because I have the draft at 8 o'clock. I don't want to jump in this draft and do a show starting in the 5th round. And technically it's difficult to make this all work anyway. I'll look into it. We'll see what we do there. But next week's a big week. All this draft baseball really starting to take off, both here on the show and in the general universe as well. I see a question here before we go and talk some more information here about today's show. See a question here about John. John, any speculation on teams making signings with the worry that the CBA is up in 2016? I think that will be a hard cap. We've talked about this, John. I did a show where I broke down my thoughts on the CBA about a week ago, something like that. Bottom line for me is this: the CBA ends, I think it's December 2nd, 2026. Everyone anticipates at this point in time there being a strike. Or lockout, however we do it. That's what everyone anticipates right now. The owners are fighting amongst each other for what they want to do. The players don't want to give up an inch. That's a problem. Any speculation on teams making signings now with the worry that the CBA is in 2006? Can you tell me a little bit more? I don't know why teams would. No one knows what's going to happen. I don't think there'll be a hard cap. I don't think that the teams that have the money want that. And frankly, the players don't want that, John. Because if there's a hard cap, what happens is there's a limit on who. No one's making $700 million if there's a hard cap. No one, guys, Rafael Devers not signing a $300 million contract if there's a hard cap. Your teams just aren't. So the guys at the top end won't be getting $40 million a year. They'll be getting 35. They don't like that. I think there will be a push to have a floor, which I think the players would approve and appreciate. But if you give a floor, you then don't want a cap, because if the floor is higher, the cap then comes down, right? So then you're getting this. The bottom line is the people with power, the superstars of the game, they're not going to want to give up the ability to make the most money they possibly can. And the ability for, Ohtani signs his $700 million contract. Here comes Juan Soto even making more. You're not able to do that if there's a cap. If MLB does institute a cap, and again, we talked about this. This was this was weeks ago. We talked about this when we broke down the Dodgers. You can always find everything on demand, youtube.com/@ElitePlus Network. You can find all the shows there under the live tab. If teams, I don't know how this is going to play out. I'll just say it that way. I lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. I don't know how this is going to play out. I don't know why teams making signings now that the CBA is up that there'll be a hard cap with it. I don't understand the question, so some more information if you're still there, John, would be helpful. But teams, once a contract is signed, it's signed. Players are not giving money back, right? So if someone's got a 5-year, $50 million deal and the CBA runs out, they still have multiple. They still are going to have 3 years and $30 million left on their the contract's not going to end. I don't know. I don't know what the advantage would be to teams signing guys now, unless because I don't know. If there's a hard cap, they're not signing anyone for big money now. I don't know what's going on. The bottom line is I don't think anyone knows what's going on. There are problems from all the sides here. And again, inside baseball people are predicting already that there's going to be a lockout or a strike. So let's hope that's not the case, because that would be terrible for baseball. And John said, you've been relishing your Eagles glory. You go, John. Totally understandable that you would do that. Congratulations with the Eagles. All right, let's talk a little bit about some other baseball stories before we visit with Tyler Buecher to talk some football. I mentioned this earlier in the show. Brandon Rodgers signed on to play second base for the Astros. Okay. Let's move our icon second baseman, Jose Altuve, who may make the Hall of Fame one day. Let's move him to the outfield. Let's do Craig Biggio with him. I guess it worked with Biggio, so let's do it with Altuve. Seems weird to me. Why not just leave Altuve at second base and sign an outfielder? I don't know. Rodgers goes to the Astros. The expectation at this point is that he's going to be their second baseman. There was Mauricio Dubon talked like a day earlier about how Dubon's going to be the second baseman, it looks like, for the Astros. Well, a day later after that story broke, they signed Brandon Rodgers. Rodgers, obviously a high-end talent, a guy who was expected to be an all-star at the major league level, a guy who's never developed, just hasn't gotten there, dealt with a ton of injuries. Now, I've said this before, I'll say it again, he loses Colorado, which sucks. But remember, Colorado's also a mile up, which aids the ball flying. It also hinders your body's ability to recuperate and recover. It's more difficult physically to play at altitude. Maybe playing at a lower level, more towards sea level, maybe that'll help Rodgers' body stay or remain healthy. Speculation, of course, but there is some science there. So we'll see. He's not an exciting player. He doesn't run or anything like that, but hitting in the Houston's it's a good place to hit, and the lineup's banging. He'll probably hit the bottom third of the order, I would think, though, so that does limit his outlook a little bit. Who is going to play shortstop for the Brewers with Willy Adames in San Francisco? The answer appears to be Joey Ortiz. Tyler Black is going to get a chance to play third base. I have Tyler Black in my Dynasty League. I would love to have Tyler Black be the third baseman. He's killed it down in the minors. I think it's time to give him the opportunity. Oliver Dunn shouldn't block Tyler Black. We'll see at third. But at shortstop, it's likely to be Joey Ortiz. Now, Ortiz, can work the count. He can take a walk. He's a good defender. Maybe he goes 10, 15 home runs. Maybe he steals 8, 10 bases. He's a nice little player, but there doesn't appear to be any breakout potential with Joey Ortiz, and he's not someone I'd be targeting in a mixed league. The Mets, what are they doing with their batting order? Well, Francisco Lindor batting first and Juan Soto batting second appears to be what they're leaning toward. Hardly a surprise. I think that's the way that a lot of people figured it would work. There's a chance. That is a negative for Brandon Nimmo, because if it's Lindor at the top, And then it's Soto batting second. We got a good report today, by the way. Nimmo's saying he feels good, for what that's worth. If Nimmo's down in the order, well, then it's probably Pete Alonso third. And does Nimmo hit fourth? I mean, do they want to break up righties of Alonso and Vientos back to back? Because if they don't do that, if they go righty, Vientos, and Alonso, Vientos, and 3 and 4 righty, they would then have to go lefty with Nimmo and Winker in 5-6. So they might break that up. So Nimmo could hit could hit cleanup, if that makes sense. I'm stumbling all over my words. Sorry about that. But the Mets kind of figure out the batting order and what they're going to do there. Clark Schmidt has got a back injury. This is something to keep an eye on. No one is panicking with Clark Schmidt and his injury in his back. Okay. I don't know if injury is the right word as much as he's dealing with something. I think we got a report this morning. What was it? The report this morning that he's going to throw today? I'm trying to find it as we're talking here. He's going to throw a bullpen today. So, okay. He'll throw the bullpen today. We'll know by tonight, right, if he's okay or not. As of right now, cranky, wonky back. If he comes out of the throwing session today with some concerns, we'll reassess. But right now, we haven't changed his rankings over at fantasyguru.com. I don't think anyone should at this point in time. Let's watch what happens today. Clark Schmidt, by the way, not elite, not going to be elite. I'd be stunned if that happened. But he was one of the more consistent pitchers in baseball last year. Start to start. 5-6 innings every time out. Like, very, very consistent. He just needs to take that final step, which I think is just a repeat of what he did last year, to solidify his standing in the fantasy space. What are the Padres doing at catcher? Well, they've got Elias Diaz, who they signed. Martin Maldonado's floating around for some defense, and they've got Luis Campusano. It's a free-for-all. We don't know. Padres manager Mike Schilt basically said, we're going to see. The smart money is on Campusano and Diaz being the 1-2 punch. They could go with one of those two guys for offense and keep Martin Maldonado around for defense. They could do that. They could carry 3 catchers. I guess Brett Sullivan's kind of still around in the mix. Hard to see him jumping over the 3 veterans. Not that there's any standout player here. There's really not. So this is not really an exciting fantasy perspective situation, especially given the fact that there's multiple guys involved. Now, Campusano, I think, finished the year, in the minors last year. So maybe it's Diaz and Maldonado. We'll see what happens here. Just want to bring this up because it is something to keep in mind if you're in a 2-catcher league. It's something to keep in mind if you are certainly playing in an NL-only league. Right now, there's a little bit of uncertainty there. The Blue Jays. What are the Blue Jays doing? Well, we know they're not going to sign Vladimir Guerrero because he put an end to the discussion for the contracts. He said, I'm not going to negotiate now until the season's over. We know that they haven't approached Bo Bichette, as we've talked about on this show. Haven't approached Bo Bichette with a contract extension either. So those two guys contractually are up in the air. We also have a little bit of a scenario where we have a little bit of an up in the air in the batting order with the Blue Jays. Manager John Schneider said, look, and I think the quote was, our leadoff spot's going to be a fluid situation. Interesting, right? Batting orders can be fluid. Can be home and away sometimes. It often is lefty-righty, right? Okay. But the leadoff spot, you generally don't want turnover at the leadoff spot, right? You want to choose someone, stick him in there on that. The thought being George Springer, right? Well, George Springer struggled. Last year, he barely had a 300 on-base percentage. Maybe they go with him. Maybe they go with Bo Bichette, who we just talked about. Get him in front of Vlad and see if that can help him, all that. Given his season last year, that seems to be pushing it. Number one. Number two, Bichette's never been a huge on-base percentage guy anyway. Another option for the leadoff spot is Andres Gimenez. Gimenez, a very good player, 15 to 20 home runs, 25, 30 steals. He's a very sneaky power speed guy without having huge numbers in either spot. Not a great on-base percentage guy either, but he's speedy and he's an infielder and he's kind of got the look. He's got the look of a 1982 leadoff hitter. Is he the right guy now? And I guess there's Will Wagner, who's also involved too. So the Blue Jays have to make a decision on how they're going to do this. We'll follow this storyline closely. I'm going to have an article out, I think, in about 10 days. I'm trying to lay everything out so that it makes sense. And I think in about 10 days, I'll move this up. Guys that are adding pitches, batting orders that are changing, positions that are changing, those kind of things to help you get more centered on how to evaluate players for 2025. And then finally, I did get it done. Well, I'm getting it done today. I will have the breakout pitcher of the year article. It'll be out Sunday. So for those of you waiting on the breakout pitcher of the year article, look for it on Sunday. I got it done 10 days earlier than normal this year, or at least an entire week earlier than normal, because I know multiple people have been asking for that. So we'll have the breakout pitcher of the year article on Sunday. Don't tell people who it is. It's our secret, right? We're going to go with that guy. And for those of you that don't know, I have a pretty good track record of predicting success. Predicted the breakout of Corey Kluber, Kyle Hendricks, Justin Steele. Brian Wu was the guy last year. He didn't break out per se because he only made 22 starts, but he was dynamic. Had a pretty good track record of picking guys that were not overly aggressively drafted. So that article will be out on Sunday. Tomorrow will be the draft book. I'll talk more about the draft book, what it is, and why I'm not a real big fan of it on the show tomorrow. Okay, so that's me. Now it's time to talk some football. And we're going to bring in our gentleman, Tyler Beaker, who comes in every Thursday to discuss some football with us. And I can see him in the green room. He's in a different location. He must be I'm thinking he's in a bunker somewhere in North America talking with the president. I don't know what he's doing. Tyler, how are you doing today, bud?
Doing good, man. It's funny you talk about bunker with the president. I just started watching this TV show, Paradise, over on Hulu.
Yeah.
And very, very captivating. It's been one of those shows that keeps me on the edge of my seat. And it kind of follows that whole presidential bunker guideline. So things are going good here. I'm in the move process of making a move in terms of my living space.
Right.
So my office has been packed up. I'm now just in our living room right now.
Did you ever watch Designated Survivor? Did you ever see that with Sutherland?
Yeah, I watched the first season of it. Big 24 fan here.
Yeah, me too. But I never watched Designated Survivor. I know that's on Netflix now, so I always see it. I haven't watched it. I saw the Hulu show. I didn't look into it yet, but I saw the preview. I'm like, I like those kind of things too. So maybe I'll check that out. Thanks for joining us while you're going through the move. I know there's a lot going on, so we appreciate you stopping in today, Tyler. Not a lot to really discuss. We're kind of in that zone where we're getting ready for the combine and the draft's coming up, and but there's always storylines to kind of go through. So wanted to touch on a few of those with you today. And the first place I wanted to start is, what's going on with the Steelers quarterback position, right? Are they going to bring back Justin Fields? Are they going to bring back Russell Wilson? There's been a lot of talk this offseason in particular about, Tomlin and how they always make the playoffs, but they never win. Getting Wilson back, is that a winning move? Getting Fields back, is that a winning move? Are they just resigning themselves to 10 victories again with the way they're kind of looking at this quarterback position and not making a big move?
Yeah, the QB position is a big offseason topic for them. I'm really curious to see how they play this out because we've seen year after year the free agency swings they've been trying to go after haven't exactly panned out. All of their guys right now, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Kyle Allen, are all set to hit free agency. They've got Skylar Thompson right now. I think he's their practice squad QB from the Dolphins a few years back. He's the only guy on their roster right now over on one of the cap tracker websites. And free agency is very sparse with names this year. So I wouldn't be shocked if they retained one of these guys. My bet would be Fields, given that they kind of saw some ups and downs with him. Wilson, we saw, I think, a higher up in terms of the productivity on the field with the passing game. But I just feel like that's the ceiling that we'll ever see from Russ at this point of his career. With Fields, there's still the bit of the unknown. And the unknown is the constant allure for these QB coaching staffs and GMs of rolling the dice time and time again until you get Yahtzee. And maybe they're trying to do it one more time with Fields. I'll note that the Steelers' offensive line is very, very strong. And last year's round one pick, Troy Fautanu, played one game. So bringing him back, they've invested a lot of resources these last two off seasons in the offensive line. To me, it wouldn't surprise if they brought in Sam Darnold. I think he feels like the best fit here. If we look at weeks 1 through 17, he looked great behind a quality offensive line. That's what I think is really appealing here for Darnold specifically, is the offensive line and the pairing there. And when we add in his ability to play off play action, I think Darnold looks like a pretty good fit here. The draft is also an interesting spot for them to take a swing. Like maybe it's a Kenny Pickett-like swing where it's at the back end of round one. They got picked 21. And maybe they go running back or wide receiver here in that first selection. But round two, they go for the QB position. round one, I saw Ashton Giante mocked to him by Daniel Jeremiah just a few days ago, which feels like a bit of a reach. I feel like there's a possibility he's a top 15 pick and doesn't last until 21.
Right.
But there are some day 2 picks and cute quarterbacks like Alabama's Jalen Milroe, Texas Quinn Ewers, and Mississippi's Jackson Dart. I think all those guys could be worthwhile throw dice rolls to keep that pun going in round 2. And then we should also keep in mind this is an Arthur Smith offense. Like, this is not going to be a team that relies on the quarterback to throw for 4,000, 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns. They've had, under Arthur Smith, there have been some seasons where this offense has gotten by without elite quarterback and still found different modicums of success. So I think the Band-Aid play of Darnold, bringing back Fields, and then throwing like a day 2 pick on a QB makes a lot of sense if you're trying to rebuild this situation, which feels like it's in no man's land of never being a top 5 pick because of, like you said, how good Tomlin's teams have historically played. They're just never in the top 5 mix for getting a franchise-altering QB. And it's just, I think they're stuck in this situation until they have a season where they throw in all the cards or they finally get a breakthrough. Maybe they get lucky and get a round 2 QB that finally hits. They're very rare, but maybe we get a Jalen Hurts situation.
Back to Fields before we go to Darnold. I kind of feel, and maybe I'm just totally off here, maybe I'm biased because he's on my dynasty team. Has he really gotten a fair shake? Like, I know that there are things he can't do. There's a lot of quarterbacks in this league that can't do things that are pretty good. Lamar Jackson still can't throw outside the hash marks. He's an MVP. Like, there, you can work through this if you have a good system in place and all that kind of stuff. Has Fields really gotten a good shot? Like, has it been, he's with the team, they don't have any weapons, and they get rid of him, they bring all the weapons in, then he goes to the Steelers, he goes 4-2, they take him out. Like, does he deserve to be a starter in this league?
I think he deserves a longer leash to show it. You mentioned the Bears' failure to put him in a position to succeed. That offensive line, he was running for his life. Part of that was part of his play. He was a younger quarterback and held the ball longer than I think any other quarterback in those first 2 seasons. Which is not great, but he gets to now play behind a great offensive line. We saw some promise here in the season. I always circle back to the trade escalator in terms of the pick selection that was going to be sent over to the Bears in the Fields trade, where if Fields played more than half of the snaps offensively, the trade pick that was sent to acquire Fields would elevate from, I think it was like a round 4 to like a round 3 or round 2 with it being a conditional pick. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a big reason why we didn't see a lot of him towards the tail end of the season, despite them being closer to the 500 mark than not.
Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. You mentioned Sam Darnold, and he's an interesting guy for a variety of reasons. Number one, does he return to Minnesota? They've got J.J. McCarthy, but Darnold, as you noted, weeks 1 to 17 is pretty damn good. There have been links to the Raiders. There have been links to the Steelers. Now there's talk about the Vikings maybe giving him the franchise tag and then trading him. Because as we learned on the Elite Sports Show yesterday, I didn't even realize this, the Vikings have 3 draft picks this year. 3. They have no draft picks. Maybe they sign Darnold to a franchise tag and then trade him. So there's a lot going on with Sam Darnold. He seems to be a rather pivotal player for a bunch of organizations, actually. What are your thoughts? Give us a little bit more detail on Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I think the tag and trade's the most likely outcome. You mentioned the lack of draft picks. The GM for the Vikings has been a wheeler and dealer and a very, very shrewd draft pick selector, which is really tough to continuously get hits out of the NFL draft. They're finally giving the defensive coordinator there some quality pieces where he doesn't have to blitz a 90% rate. He can just do it at a 50% rate and still lead the league. I think that there's a chance that we do the tag and trade because it gets them the ability to recoup some value. And like I said at the beginning, the free agency is just so sparse with available names. They'll be able to get a pretty good market and a pretty good return there, I think, in options at the QB position. So that would be my guess as to how it all unfolds. And I feel like the Steelers could be a selection. If I'm trying to look at like the best landing spots, it'd probably be them or Las Vegas. I think Las Vegas also has a quality offensive line. And after the Minshew O'Connell situation, let's try a re-roll. Let's try anything other than those 2 guys. So just bringing in an outside name for Las Vegas also seems like a priority for a team that's seen so much turnover already this offseason.
The Rams are another team that could see a significant turnover on the offensive side of things. You've already heard that they're going to move on from Cooper Kupp. They're working to trade him. Matthew Stafford now, uncertainty. We got the whole off-the-field stuff with his wife always in the press. And, Stafford is going to come back. Is he going to retire? Is this a play for more money? We just don't know. Jimmy Garoppolo is a free agent, so technically the Rams they even have a quarter. All right. So we've heard Stafford could return or be moved to a different team. You've heard Aaron Rodgers piping in and say, "Oh, I'd love to play for the Rams if Matthew Stafford leaves." Talk us through what you think LA does and who is Matthew Stafford right now. Is he better than Aaron Rodgers? I mean, these guys can still lead an NFL team, okay, but is there really any separation between these two guys at this point of their careers?
Yeah, I read a report from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler that a deal with Stafford and the Rams appears untenable at this time. He's entering his age 37 season. But last year, to me, he looked really solid, especially whenever he had his weapons healthy in the Cup and Nakua. Yep. From week 8 on, Stafford was QB9 in EPA per play. He looked great in my eyes. So I think there's a big jump when we talk about the ability to play right now between Stafford and Aaron Rodgers. To me, I think Rodgers, like the end is here. The back half of the season, we really saw he was more focused on not getting hit over completing passes. And there are very few teams that are a quarterback away that are from being a contender, sport a quality offensive line, and have a coaching staff willing to put up with Rodgers BS day in and day out. I don't think McVay fits under that. I think Stafford would be the more desirable asset, and I think he could be a guy that goes to, like, I don't know why. I feel like the Giants feel like a good fit for him.
Okay.
We get to see neighbors with a quality quarterback. Maybe they spend some early draft capital at another wide receiver position, double down, and see what Stafford still has left in the tank. He was still able to feed Nakua consistently. We saw them give the Eagles a run for their money in the postseason. I was impressed with the Rams over the back half of the season. I really was. They've had a quality defense, and the Giants may not have that exact thing, but they do have a quality pass rush. There are some pieces in the secondary. They need to add more pieces in the secondary. But I think the Giants feel like a good fit. As for Rodgers, I don't know, man. Like maybe the Raiders, another like culture fit where it's in limbo, and we just see them go for the ticket selling avenue. Again, that offensive line's not bad. We've seen them progress throughout the last few years. They have like an unheralded defensive unit in my eyes. They've gotten better year after year. Patrick Graham, shout out to him, the defensive coordinator, retained. He's got a good background. Does Devontae Adams take the bait returning to Las Vegas? Probably not. I was trying to think of another fit for Aaron Rodgers, and I thought of the Titans as like a wild card play.
Okay.
They're not a contender per se, but they are in a relatively soft division, and there's a chance you win the division, enter the postseason, make some noise. Who knows from there? And last year's defense, they had some quality pieces, but they also had a lot of injuries pile up for them. If they can remain healthy, let's say the Titans also bring in Devontae Adams in a package deal. I think it could be an interesting fit. And then we add in all the early round draft selections that the Titans have this year, drafting at the top of the board. It could be a big shakeup here. Really unique opportunity for a general manager to bring in a guy like Rodgers and have like the round 1, round 2 picks at the top of the board like they do.
If by the way, if Stafford goes to the Giants, does Malik Neighbors catch 125 passes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, right? Like that would be the storyline, right? I mean, because Stafford, no matter where he's been for an entire career, there's always that alpha receiver that is just getting peppered by targets.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it with Nakua. We saw it with Cup seasons prior. Yeah, and Neighbors, I think last year was top 5 in targets. Yeah. There's a chance that just continues to unfold, and we see it progress year 2. And that was with him playing 15 games, I believe. I still think he missed some action. So the sky is the ceiling for Neighbors. So invest, guys. Invest.
Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. Interesting scenario we got playing out with the Bengals, right? We know Jamar Chase is going to get paid. It's going to happen this offseason. Reports suggesting he's looking to be the highest paid guy ahead of Justin Jefferson. Almost certainly going to happen. We've heard that the Bengals are now going to franchise tag T. Higgins. So we're talking about 2 wide receivers making about $70 million this year, according to kind of where we're – that's ooh. Then we're talking about Trey Hendrickson on defense, who says he doesn't want to be there. He really wants to get paid. I mean, that's right. I mean, so we're talking about, what are these 3 guys going to make $100 million? Like, talk us through, number one, does this make any sense financially? Does it even make any sense? And number 2, how excited would you be about the Bengals offense if it was indeed, again, Burrow, Chase, and Higgins?
Yeah, the longer the Bengals wait to pay Jamar Chase, the steeper the contract gets. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Pay that man yesterday.
Yeah, right?
Even if it's as simple as giving him $1 more than Justin Jefferson. Let him feed his ego. I'm expecting a similar contract to what Jefferson got in that $35 million per year contract range, which is what Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb both got last offseason. I'm expecting that if maybe not a little bit more, maybe 36. Let's just get these guys excited to play.
Right.
T. Higgins, per Tom Pelissero, they reportedly want to sign Higgins to a long-term extension.
Mm-hmm.
Their emergency break glass solution, in case they can't get a deal by March 4th, is to do the second straight year of franchise tagging him, which is costly. Doing it for the second time in a row elevates that to a 120% pay increase, which would put his tag above the current 1-year tag, quote unquote, for any other wide receivers this year. So I'm expecting them to retain Higgins when we look at like this depth chart. There's nobody there.
Right.
Jermaine Burton, promising talent.
Yeah.
Possible head case. We don't know. He's been evicted twice in the last calendar year.
I think it's okay to say he's a head case. You don't have to say possible about it.
Yeah. I think he's heading down a dangerous path. I'm ready to draft him in UFL leagues very shortly.
Yeah.
Andre Yoshevich, Charlie Jones, they're better depth pieces than a wide receiver too. So I think because of that, it makes me feel like retaining Higgins feels like a real probability in terms of what we've heard from the GM, what we've heard from reports, and what this team needs. This is a passing offense that I feel like not surrounding Burrow with quality weapons is a disservice to him in his prime, when you have the ability to like make a legitimate run. I'd really anticipate Higgins being retained by Cincinnati. So if we're looking at like the $35 million per year for Chase, I'd expect I'd expect T. Higgins to be more in the maybe the 25 to 30 to 28 kind of million.
Right.
It's not really that elite, but still getting paid really well. And the current 1 year, what's it called? 1 year free agency tag would be about 26 million for him. So for him to get like, let's say 28 million would be something that makes all sides happy. And maybe it's a 3-year contract or 4-year instead of the 5 for 35 that Chase is likely to get. I just feel like with how thin this group is, retaining Higgins should be a priority. And I wouldn't even be surprised if they spend a mid-round pick, like a round 3, round 4 on a wide receiver as well, just kind of re-rolling on the Burton pick that kind of was the swing and miss. As far as the defense, I don't know much about the Hendrickson situation, to be honest. That kind of surprised me given how great of a year he's coming off, how well he's done in this defense, and maybe he's just sick of being the singular star there. I don't blame him for wanting to get paid after a season that he had.
Tyler Beaker, FantasyGuru.com. Another team that definitely has a need at the wide receiver position is the Houston Texans. I guess Tank Dell's first surgery or 2 went well. He's still got more surgery to come on his knee. It's unclear if he's even going to play. Let's be honest. It's unclear if he'll ever play in the NFL again. It's not certain that he will. Certainly not clear at all that he's going to play in 2025. They've obviously got Nico Collins, but then they've got a bunch of the supporting pieces behind him, it looks like. And then they got the case of Stefon Diggs, who, Stefon Diggs had a couple of nice games kind of just around, before he hurt his knee. But he was still on pace for like 90 catches and 1,000 yards. Like he was still involved in this offense. They could definitely use him back. The GM said that, hey, man, we're not against this idea. Who is Stefon Diggs? Do you think there's any chance he returns to the Texans now that they got a new offensive plan in place and all of that? Or do you think he's going to the highest bidder?
Yeah, after being traded to Houston last offseason, his deal allowed them to restructure his contract so that he'd be a free agency this offseason. We saw GM Nick Cassero say the door is always open for Diggs. He reported that this morning. Given the timing and severity of Tank Dell, as you noted, with the torn ACL, torn MCL, torn LCL, damaged meniscus, I agree with you. I don't know if we'll ever see this guy play again. I am not drafting him whatsoever in 2025 fantasy drafts. Right. I think that is a wasted draft pick. We are looking at a lengthy recovery with the possibility he never suits up again. So any speculation on a return for Dell this season is guesswork. You mentioned the change in offense. They got rid of PFF Bobby Slowick. We're sick of that run, throw on 3rd and long. Thank God they got rid of that. I am so frustrated with this Texans offense. I'm excited to see something different, just anything different than run, throw. They brought in Nick Caley from the Sean McVay coaching tree. He's the latest apple to be plucked from that tree. Pass game coordinator for the Rams last year, where we saw Stafford put up a good year with healthy with Nakua and those guys. I'd like to think bringing back a veteran like Diggs would be of importance to a pass game coordinator, especially for a team that lost a notable weapon in Tank Dell and what he offered to this offense. We also saw CJ Stroud has publicly advocated for the return of Diggs. It all kind of shapes up to Diggs returning. He's not a young chicken. I expect him to have like a 1 or 2 year contract, but adding a win now piece to a rather young team, that's like, we saw a great year one from this team with Stroud last season, 2 seasons ago, pardon me, when he was selected second overall. To see that leap and then have a step backward in year 2, I think this is when you, while you have this guy on a really cheap contract, this is when you surround him with playmakers and bring in those guys that can elevate his game for the long future and for the short term too. Provide some potential for this team to make some noise in the postseason. I mentioned the AFC South being a bit of a weaker division. I think there's a chance that it's wide open. So if I'm the Texans, I'm going all in, trying to figure out ways to elevate Stroud's game and get him back to that offensive rookie of the year campaign. And that starts with bringing back Diggs. They need some weapons.
You mentioned Diggs, Tyler, and said he's kind of old. Let's get old. Let's get funky. Adam Thielen. Let's get old. Adam Thielen has been the only consistent pass catcher for the Panthers for a couple of years now. He does seem to have, for what it's worth, a decent rapport with Bryce Young. He's perfectly capable of, moving the chains and that kind of thing. And there's a need for him on the Panthers. And it makes sense that they'd want to retain him and all that. Apparently, there's been some talk, well, he might want to retire, and this may be just a ploy to get a contract. Adam Thielen is he worth it? Is he worth the effort? I mean, is he the guy that, just gets just 4 or 5 passes for 58 yards every week for the Panthers? Is that who he is in this offense, even if he does resign or stay with the club?
Yeah, we saw some really slot-heavy games from Bryce Young whenever he was finally making that turnaround in year 2, where he peppered the slot routinely, whether it be Thielen or another player that was filling in for him when Thielen was injured. I think the slot role is notable in this offense. We saw Dave Canales really turn this unit around in year 1. Hell, just getting anything out of Bryce Young was amazing to me. They brought back Andy Dalton on a 2-year deal, but again, this is Young's offense. I expect them trying to, like they do with any young quarterback, try to get the most out of them. Surrounding them with sure-handed receivers over guys like Leggett, Coker. I don't know. I think there's a path where we see Thielen retained, continuous slot-heavy role, and the Panthers invest a round 1 pick in a wide receiver. They need some outside help in my eyes. But Thielen, you said it, like the 5 for 52 is probably like the median projection we got for him every single week. You really only want to play him in like DFS circles, like whenever he's cheap and like 3,400 on DraftKings or something like that. Not really interested in him from a season-long perspective. Maybe some best ball dart throws, but not like if anything, you're meeting the 8.3% ownership expectation. You're not trying to go overboard with a 30% portfolio of Thielen right now.
Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. Question for you about Jameson Williams, who had his 1,000-yard season this year. He's had problems. He's gambling and suspensions and guns. Like, there's a lot of things going on with Jameson Williams away from the football field. The good news, the positive news, is that situation with the gun in his car. He was a passenger. Apparently, he's not going to get suspended by the league for that. What do we do with Jameson Williams? Do you trust this guy? Because, I mean, it's not one thing. And I am risk adverse when it comes to these guys being meatheads off the field, personally. Like, I just don't. Again, gambling and suspensions and guns, like, that's not going in the right direction for me. So I don't draft Jameson Williams. I just don't draft that type of player. Am I crazy? Are you still confident in him and in his role in this offense with the Lions, that you're going to overlook these things that tend to happen to him away from the field?
It's a good question. Like, one thing you can look past. 2 things, your eyebrows are raised and you're looking at it. 3 things, you're like, oh, come on, man. Get it together. You're getting paid millions of dollars to play a kid's game. I'm kind of not against what you said, but I'm also for the game-breaking ability for some of these players, where I'm willing to overlook that kind of stuff. I guess I should preface this by the type of contest that you're playing. If you're in dynasty leagues, I think Jameson Williams is worth holding on to. I think he's worth shopping as well. I think he's worth seeing what you can get back in return, given the season that he's coming off and what we've seen. In best ball leagues, I think that spike week potential is definitely worth pursuing. But in a redraft start-sit format, maybe this is where you play him based on the contest you're playing, and you fade him in start-sits because there are going to be weeks where he's a top 24 receiver, other weeks where he's a top 96 receiver. And we're just like, oh, what do we do? Do we flex him?
Right.
And the problem is those games come sporadically and it's not even matchup based. It's where he just gets loose on a random play and goes for 60, 70 yards and the touchdown. Not many players are capable of doing that. And in my eyes, those are the types of players worth holding on to and rostering. So I'm still an advocate for him. He has backbreaking game speed. They got him involved in some carries. It's going to be a new offense. I will say that. There's going to be some changes there, but it's still an elite offensive line. Jared Goff has shown he's able to deliver the ball to Jameson with relative consistency. Some of those inconsistencies can be blamed on Jameson as well. He's not without his blame on drops, but there is that upside, that ceiling chasing upside that I think he's worth targeting depending on the format that you're playing in.
Final wide receiver I want to ask you about, or wide receiver situation I want to ask you about, is in Jacksonville. We got a report from ESPN that there's a strong chance that the Jaguars cut Christian Kirk. Now, we know how this goes. Liam Cohen's in town. He's the new head coach. Coaches like their guys. Maybe it's a schematic thing. Maybe it's a personality thing. Maybe he just wants to go in a different direction. I don't know. Kirk's dealt with some injuries. He's been out of the lineup, all that kind of stuff. To me, on the surface, I don't know how cutting Kirk, unless it's just a financial thing. I don't know how cutting Kirk improves the team. Like, I feel like they need Christian Kirk in this offense, especially if they want to really focus on giving, Trevor Lawrence the opportunity to improve. Am I wrong? Is Christian Kirk floats him and jets him? Is he a nobody at this point? Were you surprised to hear this report that suggested they could cut him?
Yeah, I remember hearing his initial contract was 3 years ago now, where he got paid a lot of money to join Jacksonville from Arizona, one that raised a lot of eyebrows. I think he's earned it, though. I mean, he's played really well in Jacksonville to date. These last few years, injuries have piled up for sure. He's taken advantage of some of those injuries as well on his own behalf, but I don't blame them for wanting availability. I will say that the Cohen offense has looked really good. We saw a lot of players in Tampa Bay make a step forward, a lot of them being unknown players, or players with minimal productivity. And then we saw the heavy hitters like Evans also get their share of production. I agree with you, where I think cutting Kirk is more of a net loss than a net gain. I don't know his cap hit off the top of my head. Curious to see what that is, given that we know it was an expensive contract, but there's so much cap manipulation these guys can do. They got a new GM in there. Let the new GM stretch his legs in there. Let him show what he's capable of doing.
Well, if we're going to run a Tampa Bay-ish offense loosely, isn't Christian Kirk Chris Godwin? I mean, that's the role in the offense, right? I mean, Gabe Davis, you can't trust to play. He doesn't do anything anyway. We run fly routes. Parker Washington, who cares? Josh Reynolds, who cares? Devin Duvernay's a return guy like Tim Jones, the most boring name in football. It just seems weird if we're going to run the same offense that there wouldn't be a role for Christian Kirk.
I 1,000% agree, unless they want to put Evan Ingram in that as the big slot, quote unquote.
I guess I could do that.
But you need some speed there. You need some speed. Throwing Kirk, I think, is a net win and a net positive for this unit, where I'm expecting them to pass a bit more, let go of the run. We just really haven't seen it with ETN and Tank. There's just not a winning combo right now. I don't know if they'll add somebody of stature with an early draft pick or out of free agency, but they need to change something in that backfield. Investing in the offensive line should also be a priority in my eyes. But the big thing for this Jacksonville team is fixing their secondary, which has been porous, and a team you want to target in fantasy. So maybe they're trying to make cap space. Maybe they're trying to bring in some big name free agents on the defensive end.
Right.
That's the only move I can justify. But I think doing it at the expense of your quarterback, who's still in limbo. I mean,
who's getting paid $275 million,
and he's still a question mark in many people's eyes, mine included. I think he's surrounded with talent, and cutting Kirk feels the exact opposite of that.
Tyler Beaker of FantasyGuru.com joins us every Thursday. I know he's in the process, as you mentioned, of getting things together to move, so we appreciate him coming on the show today. You're going to be able to make it next week?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Next week, and then the following week is the week where we may not have you, right?
Yeah, it depends how easy it is to set up internet access at the new place.
That's always fun. Let's hope that goes
smoothly.
Can't wait. Yeah, that's just knock on wood that it goes smoothly for you. Thanks for hopping in today. We really appreciate it, Tyler. You can obviously find all of his work over at FantasyGuru.com. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. Get signed up for the football package. It's year-round. We never stop. Tyler mentioned last time he was on, And I assume you would mention again here, Tyler, you've got your best ball stuff up at fantasyguru.com. You're getting ready to start doing some rookie player profiles. So you're already looking ahead for those folks that want to sign up right now at fantasyguru.com.
Yeah, we have our off-season package called, do you know the name of it off chance?
I'm forgetting it. Is it franchise mode? It was franchise mode.
Yeah. Yes, that's what it's called. And I plan on dropping a lot of rookie profiles starting like March 1st, hoping for those to flood the website. We got free agency, the NFL Combine, all big events coming up here in the very near future. Like you said at the start of the show, this is a very slow period for the NFL, but it does ramp up in the next 2 weeks. So expect a lot of franchise mode content on the site in the very, very near future.
Yeah, and the franchise mode package, dynasty rankings, dynasty Discord channel, the player profiles that Tyler was just talking about, mini camp reports, NFL draft live stream, so you can see the reactions in real time, and UFL rankings. We do cover the UFL, all right? And DFS Marlin, our guy, won 50 grand something in a tournament last year playing in the UFL. So we got one of the best, I think, in the UFL as well. So check us out. That is, again, the franchise mode package over at fantasyguru.com. All right, Tyler, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. Take care and good luck boxing things up.
All right. Thank you for having me. Check you out later.
He's Tyler Beaker. I'm Ray Flowers. We'll be back again tomorrow on Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow. Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.